final countdown. The last one of the breakfast here at Alma, and we go in English again because we have another distinguished guest from United of States. Welcome, Keary.
Thank you.
Head coach of the Crocodiles. Please, first of all, tell us a little bit of your background. I've understood that you were born and bred in Ohio, Midwest, hotbed of football.
Yeah. My dad probably told you a little bit about that, about being from Youngstown, Ohio. Grew up in Ohio. Was born there and lived there until I was till college, and actually went to school at Miami of Ohio in the southern part of the state by Cincinnati. So it's about 5 hours from where I live. And then after college, couldn't find anything better to do, so I went to study Russian in Russia. Since then, I've basically lived permanently in Europe.
Obviously, you played football in school.
Mm-hmm.
Did you also play in college?
No, I stopped after high school. I was a relatively distinguished track and field athlete. Well, field, not the track part, but throwing, shot put, and discus, and a little bit of hammer. So I was more considering continuing my athletic career in college for field. Took a couple visits to some schools about that, but never went through with it. Decided that wanted to focus on academics, and honestly, I was tired of lifting and doing all the hard work and everything like that. So I decided that I wanted to take a year off, and that year became forever.
You were playing offensive lineman, but you were skinny.
No, I didn't look like this.
That's like, you know. Yeah. What's your first memories of football?
Yeah, probably going to practices with my dad when he was coaching at some high schools in the state of Ohio. So going to the practices, going to the games, just seeing that whole atmosphere. And it's great to be, it's kind of magical when you're a kid to watch guys that are, a little bit older than you and playing and in front of thousands of fans and within these important games.
Was Thanksgiving Day football always a number at your family?
Yeah, for sure. But, it was always let's get past this NFL stuff and get to the college football part of it.
Who did you grow up rooting for in the college and in NFL?
Well, we didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. It was Notre Dame.
That's a very good choice, I think.
Yeah, it is. So it was Notre Dame. My dad's a huge Irish fan, and I think he told you about that in his interview about why. But we grow, no one ever knows why they like a certain sports team or not, But it was definitely my dad, and he was a huge Notre Dame fan, and we lived in Ohio, and it's everyone else is Ohio State fans, so it was being in enemy territory. Yeah. But as far as NFL goes, I get this from my dad too. He was never I think maybe more he watches the NFL and kind of appreciates it more than he had in the past. But growing up, at least, I really didn't watch too much professional football. I was watching more college and high school football.
If I understood correctly, that at college you got hooked in Russian studies, and then you eventually ended up living in Russia for several years. Any normal guy from Midwest USA, when you mention Russia, they usually start saying how bad it is, and what made you make that choice, and why was it that was so intriguing for you?
Yeah, well, I think when I was a kid, I remember being really into like the fall of the Soviet Union, and trying to figure, my grandma had this videotape, because back when we had videotapes, and it was about the ABC documentary about the fall of the Soviet Union. I was like, wow, this looks important, something important happened, and then I've always been interested in history and politics, and I get that from my mom. She's a history teacher and government teacher in the States in high school. And so when I went to college, I knew I wanted to do something with politics, something with history, something there. And one requirement was that you had to study a foreign language for 3 years. So I thought, I just want to get this requirement over with. And, I thought, well, Russia, it's always interested me. There's nothing better to do. So you might as well do that. And in the school I went to, I didn't know who this lady was. I didn't know that the center was really good, but they had a great center for Russian studies and had really good professors. And the lady that led it was kind of took me under her wing and really helped me financially, with any questions I had, was always willing to meet for office hours just to talk and, take an interest in me. So I started going to study abroad there and found that, I really, just being from, like you said, being from the Midwest, having not really traveled, never gone to Europe before that, going there, it was kind of like, I was a little bit starry-eyed, like being 18, or when I wasn't 18, but 19 or 20 in St. Petersburg, Russia, back when it wasn't like it is today, was a pretty fun time, and wanted to keep going back and all that stuff.
How long were you in Russia altogether?
I think about 6 or, if you don't count college, which I was studying abroad there periodically, 6 years, I think I lived in Moscow, something like that, 6-7 years.
You were also chosen to be the national team coach. You coached Moscow Spartans, and then came the war.
Mm-hmm.
What was your initial reaction when you heard of this commotion?
Well, I knew it was all over. I can't say that I saw the war coming. One of our good family friends, a couple of them actually, messaged me. That's when you know things are getting bad, is when, your family friends that have nothing to do with politics, or they do nothing, just start messaging you. But they asked me, is this serious? And I said, nah, it's just, a bunch of bluster by Putin, and they do this every year and all this stuff. And then, the week, we had practice. I remember very clearly we had practice the night before, and, we had practice the day of. So I went to bed. I woke up and, my phone's blowing up with messages, and I couldn't believe it. Russia, it had actually happened. They had actually invaded Ukraine. And at that moment, like I said, I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but it was very clear to me that, one, Russian football is dead for all intents and purposes. It was in a very tough situation before, but it was getting better, and we had some support from the government, and football, for them at least, requires going and playing in Europe to get better, because they don't have the opportunities within Russia to do that. And we were supposed to go play in a tournament in the CFL, in the top league there, and it was going to be, I think we were going to play Budapest, and then if we had beat them, we'd go to Kalanda, I think, or Schwäbisch Hall or something, and it was going to be like a real, maybe we get our butts kicked, but at the same time, it was a huge opportunity. So I knew that was over. And then I just thought, the rest of it, the national team, the opportunities to go abroad, or they're not coming back anytime soon. So, so it was, I went to practice that night, and I knew that it was hard to, get through it, just because we weren't thinking about that. No one said anything about it, but it was on everyone's minds, and we kind of went like that for a couple more weeks, and then we got the official confirmation that the CFL game was canceled, or postponed until further notice. But it was like a month or two away, so it was already gone, and I ended up leaving about 2 weeks after that, just thinking, with that game out of the way, we only had the Russian season, and I thought, this war will end in a month or something, so I'm gonna go to Serbia. It was very stressful mentally, I think, and Moscow was kind of a eerie place at that time, in the sense that you could just, it was palpable. You could feel in the air kind of that people were very uncomfortable. There was, there's times in Moscow where people go to their dachas in the summer and they all leave and the city kind of becomes a ghost town. And it was like that. And that was very strange for like the middle of February or end of February or whatever it was. But you could sense that something wasn't right and that people were really nervous.
You must be pretty relieved that you got out of there in a time.
Yeah, well, I think it was my family and my friends were freaking out. I was never in any physical danger. I never would have lived in Russia for as long as I had if I had ever felt that I was ever in physical danger or was being discriminated against or anything like that. But I got out when. I thought that they were going to close the borders, and I didn't know what that meant for. There were a lot of rumors going around at that time, and I didn't know what that meant for me as a foreign national living in Russia. They were talking about seizing the bank accounts of foreign nationals. So I just thought, I had gotten the war so wrong. How could I have, just told people that nothing was going to happen? Don't worry about it. Well, what happens if I take that same approach to the bank account issue or to the borders closing, and then you're wrong? Well, that's not a position I wanted to be in, and I had luckily had the financial opportunities to be able to book a ticket. It was very, very expensive, and I left to go to Serbia. I had some friends there, and it was still open to go there, so I went there, and I think that was about, like I said, 2 weeks after, and then 2 weeks, just a month or whatever I was planning to stay became a couple months, and then Timo Twelko found me.
And the rest is history,
Yeah, the rest
so
is
we
history.
say.
Yeah.
We were fortunate that you ended up here. Last year, you were one of the coaches taking Crocodiles to the Maple Bowl. What kind of memories does that bring you?
It was a very different team, I would say. Not just because the coaches were different, but I think the whole makeup of the team was different. And I think we had a lot of guys who hadn't experienced, winning and didn't really understand what it takes to win and hold yourself to a high level, I think a high standard. I'm not sure if we've completely accomplished that this year and gotten that, but I think it's the standard. The bar has been raised a little bit, and I think that experience from last year. I don't think that we really believed in ourselves until maybe the semifinal, and we realized because at the end of the season we lose to Kuopio, get our butts kicked in by the Roosters at the Velodrome. We had a lot of injuries throughout the season, but especially at the end of the year. And so I think when we beat Porvoo, actually, in Porvoo, I think that was kind of a catalyst. We get the coin flip. We were lucky we didn't have to go to Kuopio, I think, for the ninth time in a row.
Yeah.
So we were, obviously the Wolverines were loaded last year, a lot of talent, and went to the Vanta and played a very solid game. And I think at that point we realized, like, wow, we're a special group of people. Like, we can do this. And so I think that at that point I think things really changed. So it wasn't something that we did this season or some point this season. I think it was that semifinal game that got people on this team to believe that they could do something.
Well, tomorrow you will have an opportunity to put some things right. Mm-hmm. And that Porvoo coming in town, what kind of expectations do you have towards the Maple Bowl?
I think it's going to be a very tight game. I mean, I don't think that there's any illusions about that. If one of the team pulls away late, I think that's how it becomes maybe a little bit more lopsided than it'll, or if it does become like that. So it's going to be a close game, and I think we just gotta, I think both teams are pretty mentally tough. Obviously, they both want to win it at this point. So I think a lot comes down now to how the team's prepared, and hopefully that experience of playing in the Maple Bowl, the hotel, the interviews, the introductions, all this, everything around you. I hope that won't phase us now, because we can rely on the experience of last year.
We met Porvoo twice. Here at Seinäjoki, they were wounded. They were missing lots of personnel. In Porvoo, that was a nail biter.
Yeah.
That was very exciting. That was too exciting to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, my only personal foul of the year too.
Yeah. You possibly got a little loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that happens. So their receiving core is probably the best in the Maple League if you take the top 3 players.
Okay.
What do you think?
I mean, they have good players. Don't get me wrong, but I think some other teams would debate you on that. I think that every team's different, and they present. I think when you have to include the quarterback in that too, because it's such a big part, and what the rest of the offense too. And I think when you include that, I think you definitely can make an argument that the Butchers are the receiving crew that they have in their offenses. They have the most dangerous, maybe, passing game in the country when you put all the weapons together and you put Gwinner back there and an offensive line and the experience and all that stuff that they have.
I was going to continue with the saying that if you take 6 receivers, I think we're at the top of the class this year.
Or maybe 7. You can keep extending that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is not being the case here very often that we have such a great bunch of receivers. So it's kind of nice for a change.
And I think just there, if I may, I think we have to give credit to Jarkko Suokas, who's, if there was an assistant coach of the year, besides Charlie, or Charlie Ove, but if there was another one, it has to go to Jarkko for the work. You just see. I think that the second Kuopio game was really a coming out party. I know Janne Sarkala had a big game, but I really felt that if you watch that tape, our receivers, and even the first game, it was still, technically and physically we were still, not as good as Kuopio's secondary, and I think that's the standard because of how physical they play and their experience, and they were, the coaching there and everything. And we really took it to them. I think our receiving crew did in the second half, their secondary, and that's a credit to Jarkko. You turn on the first Kuopio game from last year when I was here, and then that one, and it wasn't even close. And not because of the score, not because of anything like that, but you just watch how confident our receivers played. Making the right reads, running the right routes, catching hard balls, all that stuff.
A little bit more about Butchers. Brandon Gwinner has been sensational this year. What makes him so good?
I think again, it's like their receiving crew. You can't consider them separately from each other. I'm not sure if there was anyone besides Brandon Gwinner they would have the kind of success that they've had. And I think you could say that about Eerola or Seppänen or something like that. If you take them out and put them on the Roosters, I'm not sure that they have the same kind of success that they've had with Brandon Gwinner there. So I think that it's a package, and I think Gwinner's it's scary because I think he can do so much, and you have to take account for all the different things that he can do, whether it's running the ball or throwing, and so in the past he's been way more. He's run the ball a lot more, and so that's one of the things that we're thinking that we might see some more quarterback runs than they've had. They really haven't run them this season, but in the passing game he's just always making plays, and he hangs in there. I think a lot of games for them they at times struggle to find a rhythm, but he always. If you want to call somebody Mr. Clutch, they've had some big comebacks, and against us, you mentioned the second game, it was a story of two halves because we were up 21-0 at half, and we let them back into the game, and that's partly us, but it's also partly a credit to their team and their mental toughness, and also the quarterback sticking in there and their receivers keep playing.
If you think back to the beginning of the season, is there anything that you would have done differently if you could turn back the time?
Yeah, everything. But, but
so 11-1 is not good.
Yeah, I think there were just personnel decisions and different things that I think everyone. If you say you don't have regrets or things you wish you could have done differently, then I think you're lying or fooling yourself. So I think I could definitely find a couple things.
In which department our team has progressed or got better over the season, in your opinion?
I think the wide receiving crew, and they've been working since the end of last year. I mean, these guys have been training with Yarko and put in so much time, and so much energy. But besides them, I think we have seen some improvement with the offensive line. I know we've added people and people have gotten healthy, but I think even, the guys that are lower on the depth chart have gotten better over the course of the season. They've gotten some playing time too. I'm around the offense, so it's easier for me to say, but I think defensively, I think we've improved at least, individual players with their consistency in performance as well.
What will you be doing after the season?
That's a state secret.
What, are you working for the CIA?
Another state secret.
What about in 10 years' time? Where do you see yourself?
I think at this time I'd really like to stay in Europe somewhere. I think I tell my parents this. I don't know if they understand it, but I tell them all the time. I don't. If I move back to the States and I have some opportunities to do that, but I know that I'm the type of person that I'm not going to leave and live abroad ever again. So I think this is, as I'm still relatively young, I still have time to be in Europe, and I have, again, luckily the financial opportunities. I have a remote job that I can take wherever I am. So while I have that and while I have the opportunity, I'd like to stay hopefully in Europe somewhere and kind of settle somewhere more permanently.
Thanks, Keary.
Thank you.
Good luck for tomorrow.
Thank you. That's it?
That's it.
Okay.